right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Jen Amos. And today I have with me Liam Martin, who is the co-founder and CMO of Running Remote. You can learn more about him and his company at runningremote.com, which is the world's largest remote conference. And also he has a time tracking tool for teams. You can check that out at his website, timedoctor.com. Liam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I thought I'd ask, since it's a new year, do you feel any different from 2020?
Man, I thought 2020 was going well. The first week, nothing was on fire. No one was, there were no revolutions happening. There were no coups d'etats. And then all of a sudden, I now feel like 2020 is exactly like 2021. Or sorry, 2021 is exactly like 2020. So we'll see what happens. I'm currently in Montreal, Canada, so we're on curfew and lockdown at the same time, and that's been a bit of a challenge. But outside of that, I'm alive. I have food in my fridge and a roof over my head, so I can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely hear what you're saying. I mean, I feel so sort of fortunate. I'm currently in Virginia Beach here in the States, and our area still sort of lets you go to like coffee shops and stuff and restaurants. Not all of them. A lot of them are closed, but the ones that you can go into, they're very strict about keeping a mask on. And so the little moments where I feel crazy, where I tell my husband that I want to go to a coffee shop, it's like, at least I still sort of have that luxury. But I know that, I think at the time this recording is released, it'll be about a year since the pandemic started. And I think we all have to kind of accept that fact and like see how, kind of adapt to this like odd new normal of like being at home. But Liam, fortunately for you, you have your company Running Remote, and it's the world's largest remote conference that helps companies transition to remote work. So despite, I think, just feeling locked up right now, to me, I imagine that you're doing pretty well. So, for people that are hearing about Running Remote for the first time, give us a little overview of what's it about and maybe kind of how it's capitalized from this whole shift with the pandemic.
Well, so we've been running the conference for the past 3.5 years, and the conference was actually going to enter its full year of true profitability. And our event was going to actually happen in April of 2020. And everyone knows what happened around March. So when you run a physical conference, we were going to have it in Austin, Texas. All of that got shut down. Our room blocks were very difficult to be able to get back. We had, we put down a 6-figure check for our venue, all of these costs that just, you can't really recruit because unfortunately those businesses go out of business. So it's just one of those like dominoes falling on top of each other. And a lot of those businesses are quite razor blade. So a lot of the, venues as an example, they're taking your money, but they need that money to work on the contract that they're currently working on. So it's really difficult to be able to get all that money back. Long story short, we actually ended up going virtual over the last year. And that's been a very interesting exercise. Once the pandemic was really recognized as what it was and everything was shut down, we said to ourselves, well, what's the best thing that we can do right now? And we said, that's provide people information. So we just started producing as much content as humanly possible, and we made our conference free. There is a paid tier, but you could just get access to the information for free, and we put it up on our website and on our YouTube channel for free. And that's been quite exciting. So basically the long-term kind of monetization is, can we actually retain those customers at a later date? Meaning, can we monetize those customers at a later date? So give them a really great experience now, don't necessarily charge them, give them the information that they need. And then when we run another physical version of Running Remote, hopefully they're impressed enough to actually buy a ticket.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's quite interesting how a lot of businesses, had to pivot, in 2020.
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me that for you guys, you're just like so excited to have this conference. And then obviously everything happened and you're just like, oh my gosh, what's the future of our conference? But I love how you had that mentality of like, let's just provide a lot of information. Like, let's just help, you know, the world right now by providing a ton of information that's helpful and relevant today. And I think that's really incredible that you guys kind of made that pivot. And like you said, hopefully it'll work in your favor when we get to some kind of, I don't know what the new normal would look like, but if we do go back into in person, that, you know, you'll be favored more.
My old supervisor in grad school, he was a UN diaspora expert. So he was focused on just large people moving all over planet Earth, definitely, and connected to natural disasters. And he gave me a piece of advice, which I thought was absolutely critical for March and April, which was whenever there's a natural disaster, some type of serious problem happening, the only people that survive are the people that move. The people that stay put and keep doing what they think is going to work, that has always worked before, those are usually the people that don't make it. It's the people that move that succeed. And March and April was the absolute definition of that. You've seen now companies that have completely pivoted to a remote work model. I mean, quite literally, we experienced the largest movement of labor in the history of mankind in March and April. We were at 4.5% of the US workforce working remotely pre-pandemic. It's now 45%. We've had a 10x increase. The implications are absolutely mind-blowing. Are these people going to go back to the office? Are they not going to go back to the office?
Right.
Probably the majority of them will not. How does that impact the business world? Company leases, office leases, where are they going to go? All of these open questions that we need to really kind of recognize. And even now, if you're still not thinking to yourself, oh yeah, 2021 is going to be like 2019, I mean, you're wrong. You need to adapt to these types of situations. You need to move and pivot as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, again, you know, what your company Running Remote has been able to accomplish. Give us a snapshot of what it looks like today. You know, if someone is interested in learning about your conference, like what would that look like?
So for right now, it's online. And if anyone is interested, you can just go to youtube.com/runningremote, and all of our talks are up there for free. So you can just consume all of the content that you want. But you know, you log in, basically, you sign up for a ticket, you log in. It's a whole bunch of live content. We have people like Mika, the CEO of Fiverr. We have the CEOs of Buffer, Zapier, Odesk, all of these different companies, Shopify, all of these remote first leaders that have either always been remote or have recently pivoted to a remote work style. And we're just really trying to study, how is this process working? What do they all have in common? What do they not have in common? What are the core methodologies that you need to pull out in order for your remote organization to succeed? And, you know, it's a lot more complicated than you'd think. You'd think that, oh, well, you just have everybody go remote. Well, we've all recognized over the last year that it's not just have people not in an office. There's actually a very clear system to setting up a remote team. And that's effectively what we study at Running Remote.
Yeah. Wow. That's really incredible. You did mention earlier that your company is fairly young. It's about like 3 years old, right? So tell me a little backstory. What led you to starting Running Remote?
So our tech company, Time Doctor, which is a time tracking tool for remote teams, we've been running that for the past 10 years. And I remember about 3.5 years back, we were at one of our team retreats. So remote first teams have global team retreats. So we fly everyone into one location for a week, and it's kind of like a mini conference about the company. And we were in Boracay, which is the party island in the Philippines. And we were about 100 people at that point. And we said to ourselves, well, how are we going to get to 200 people? And we started to really kind of Google that and try to find some information on how to scale from 100 to 200 remote workers. There was nothing about it. There was a whole bunch of information on how to hire a virtual assistant or, you know, how to be a digital nomad, but there wasn't much about actually building and scaling a remote team. So it was kind of a ready, fire, aim situation. I said, there must be more people like that in the world that are just like me. We basically bought a venue in Bali. That was $100,000 that we put down for that venue without actually having a single ticket sold. And we said, okay, I'm just going to see if we can make it happen. And I said to myself, even if it's a complete failure and we get all of these people to come, these speakers to come, but we don't have any attendees, if our team could learn how to retain at least 10% of our employees, we would easily make those costs back. Thankfully, we did. The event was very successful. We had a couple hundred people that attended.
Wow.
And now we're kind of flash forwarding to today, where remote work isn't just a nice to have, it is the absolute critical component to running your business probably in 2022. So now things have completely changed for us as a conference.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's crazy. Well, yeah, really cool. And I think even for me, I have been self-employed and working from home for the last decade. And I remember my mom, I was living with my mom at the time when I started working from home. She's all like, so when are you going to get a permanent job? And really what I'm trying to say is that, back then, I mean, even in the recent years before COVID happened, it seemed like it was so taboo, to work from home. And now it's like it's a staple, like you have to work from home. And, I just like what you said, made me think about like, well, what happens to these big corporations that had these big leases for these big buildings to, have their teams at, employees at. It's like, I wonder how that's going to shift today. And anyway, I guess we're going to see. We're just going to find out in 2021 as things start to,
Yeah, I mean, I do have an educated guess on that. I think that this is probably going to dictate, this is going to be a larger impact than the pandemic. How many people are actually going to go back to the office? Because when you look at real estate, 35% of it is just office leases. Right? So when you look at the reality of effectively right now, half of those offices are empty right now in the United States.
Right.
So do 50% of those people go back? Is it 90%? Is it 10%? Best cases that we have right now is we're currently at 45% of the US workforce working remotely. Best estimates are between 30 and 35% will be working remotely after the pandemic. So we're only going to see about a 25% reduction in those numbers. So that still leaves a third of all office space empty for 2022, 2023. And no one really knows what to do with that space at this point. It's actually a big hole, and I don't understand why it isn't getting more exposure than it should get, because it is an economic time bomb waiting to go off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure they have their reasons. There's more than we are allowed to know. I imagine that's my at least. But I appreciate you sharing educational guess on that, Liam. I want to go ahead and shift here and talk a little bit more about you as an entrepreneur. But before I do, anything else I should know, or anything else you want to share with our listeners about running remote or Time Doctor?
Boy, I think the best thing to do is just go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/runningremote, because all the talks are there and they're open source. So if you really want to know who we're about, go to the YouTube channel.
Awesome. Love it. All right. So Liam, you have been, you kind of identify yourself as a digital nomad, and you have been kind of living this life for the last 15 years now. And I mean, obviously right now we're kind of cooped up and you're stuck there, in Canada, like at the moment. But I think that's pretty astounding, to have been able to sustain that lifestyle for 15 years. I mean, obviously right now people are working from home. I don't think we necessarily have the luxury to be a digital nomad, but, up prior to this point, how are we able to sustain that lifestyle?
Yeah. So first off, don't be a digital nomad in 2021 until you get the vaccine. do not do that, because that doesn't help anybody. But for me, at least, location independence is really one of the huge advantages of remote work. So most remote workers are not digital nomads, and for those listeners that they don't really know what the definition of that is. It's someone who basically works from their laptop and is location independent. So I travel about 6 months out of every year to different locations. And what I'll usually do, the methodology that I use is, I slow move as opposed to fast move. So there are fast nomads and slow nomads. I'm the slow category, meaning I choose 1 or 2 locations per year that I spend at least 3 months at. So before the pandemic, I think the last place that I went to was Playa del Carmen in Mexico. really beautiful town, about 250,000 people, tons of co-working spaces, really good internet. You need to check your infrastructure, make sure that everything is solid before you actually move to that particular location. And then first week, you just find yourself a really nice hotel. So I usually find myself a nice hotel for the first week, set up a home base, kind of just figure out what I want to take a look at in terms of long-term rentals. And then I'll make a 3-month commitment to a long-term rental that has good internet, relatively good infrastructure, is in a safe area. And Playa del Carmen, for me, I was doing pretty much exactly what I was doing in Canada, except I had a view of the beach. And that just makes my life a little bit different. And you can experience a completely different environment. So, you know, walking at night in a completely new neighborhood, being able to experience foods that you wouldn't have been able to get access to, and interacting with people that you just wouldn't be able to get access to where you usually live, to me, makes you a better person. And that's what digital nomadism can afford me, is the ability to be able to go wherever I want, whenever I want, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I even just like, yeah, kind of like that geographic flexibility. I mean, I kind of fell into it on accident because I couldn't hold down a job in my young 20s. But as as the years went on, I was like, you know what, I actually kind of like this. And even if I entertained the job, I was like, no, I actually like working out of my laptop. And, fortunately, I met my husband, who's very much like the same way. And he's been doing it in his own way, in his own business, prior to us being together. But it really is nice to have that flexibility. And, given the landscape of things, if I think it's nice to travel, by choice and by leisure, and, just to experience different parts of the world. But I also think that if there is some crazy chance where we have to move, we have the ability, to do it. And I think that is really kind of the benefit of, being a digital nomad.
Absolutely. That's another industry that's going to completely explode in probably this year. Is we've also seen all of the tech companies have gone remote. Shopify, Twitter, Google, Salesforce, all of these massive tech companies have all gone remote, and they're all in the $100,000 plus salary category. Well, they're all going to want to start traveling, because why wouldn't you, when you're faced with a $8,000 1-bedroom lease in San Francisco? Well, $8,000 a month can go a lot further in a place like Chiang Mai or Ubud, Bali, or Barcelona. So I think we're going to see a complete transformation of the digital nomad class in 2021 and 2022, which is also incredibly exciting and really fun for me, because those are the people that I love to hang out with in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I have found really trendy, at least of summer in 2020, are RVs. I have a number of friends, I can name them, where they sold their house and they moved into an RV, and they're just traveling. They just move every week or so. Like, they find an RV park and hang out there and do what they do, and then keep traveling. And that's kind of a dream that my husband and I have. We've entertained it by renting RVs, but I think that's very much could be a possibility given the state of things. But we'll see. Obviously, it's not anytime soon.
Right.
But awesome, Liam. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Before we go, any final parting piece of advice that you want to share with our small business owners and entrepreneurs listening to The Thoughtful Entrepreneur?
I think that remote work isn't just a nice to have, it's a need to have now. And you need to recognize how to actually execute on building a remote team effectively. It's going to become the way that teams are built in the future. So learn as much as you can about the subject, whether it's from people like me or anyone else in the space. I think it's so important to be able to do it now, because you're going to be ahead of the curve. And it's always a good idea to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to move or keep moving too.
That's true too.
Awesome. Liam, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much. And thank you for being an inspiration, I think, to all digital nomads. You've been able to figure that out for the last 15 years. I know you're cooped up right now, but you'll be okay. We've counted our blessings. You have a roof over your head.
Yeah, I think the moment I get the vaccine, I'm out of here. I've not been able to get in a plane in 9 months and 28 days.
You've been counting. I love it.
Yeah. So it's been a bit of I've been fantasizing about eating at a buffet, flying business class, and going to a movie theater
Love it.
like probably a lot of other people. So if you're in that same boat, go remote, become a digital nomad. You'll probably see me at one of these locations.
There you go. Beautifully said. Well, again, Liam, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And to our listeners, this is again Liam Martin, who is the co-founder and CMO of Running Remote. You can learn more about him and his company at runningremote.com. Also learn about his time tracking tool for teams at timedoctor.com. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll chat with you in the next episode. Tune in next time.